Hi there! Welcome to Becoming the Self-Led Woman podcast. My name is Monica, and this is a weekly podcast for modern women in which we will explore different topics such as self-leadership, personal growth, financial empowerment, feminine wisdom, all sorts of things that help us understand how can we navigate nowadays as a modern woman. You can think of it as a coffee chat that you can have with an older sister. So here I am as your older sister that I am sharing honest, supportive, practical insights that can help you create the life that feels more aligned, more empowered, and really more heart-led and authentic. This week, let's talk about creativity. This magical skill that we all have inside of us. However, whenever we talk about creativity, people tend to associate it with the mysterious talent that artists, scientists, people with these talents like their inner genius that has. So many people might wonder, oh, I'm just an average mortal and I probably am not that creative. However, what I can tell you that everyone and each person within each of us, there is this creative spark that we all have ever since we were little kids. And it is often the most alive when we were in our childhood. However, as we grow up, many of us actually get conditioned out of our natural innate creativity. So what happens is that there's this classical example in which a kid starts to draw, starts to paint, but then the parents would be like, oh, maybe you should develop other kinds of skills because they actually worry about the kid becoming a starving artist. And for example, when I grew up, I always had this fixation somehow with animals, with bugs. And I don't remember since when I actually started to feel embarrassed about it. As if, oh, a girl shouldn't be interested in those things because it would look weird. But then as I grew up, I actually realized that I really love biology, especially when it comes to evolution, when it comes to animals. But this is the reality of many of us, is that we grow up with certain conditioning from society, from our loved ones. Then we start to dismiss our creative inner sparks. And we might also dismiss things that we might enjoy doing, some hobby, thinking that, oh, maybe it is a waste of time. Maybe I should focus on what's more important. Or even worse, so many of us nowadays, as we navigate through adulthood, we are often drained by the highly stressful routine, by all the fast paced, attention draining lives that we are living. So we have to go to our 9 to 5 job, we have to commute 2 hours or more per day. And then the food that we eat is often not healthy, lots of processed food, which actually drains our body, our physicality. And then if we are often having this inflammatory reaction within our bodies, and if we are often feeling drained and lack of healthy energy, then there is this mental exhaustion and less energy within us. And if we are living in this chronic stress and chronic scarcity, chronic worries, even anxiety, like a slow burnout, I can tell you that stress and scarcity are huge enemies of creativity. For us to actually be more able to reach our inner spark, our inner creativity, it is often important to have a life structure that supports it, like having proper rest, having proper stability, So many people, when they are struggling in life to even have stability, it can be very hard for them to tap into their inner creativity. Well, unless you're talking about the creativity to actually find solutions, for example, to change your life, because there are people who are actually having this inner capacity to do so. But for example, if we are talking about creativity like painting, drawing, writing, creating things, having creative ideas, usually a stressful life that is already very draining in the routine doesn't really help. And once I've read something about an interview that a person did with a woman who was wealthy. And I remember that this person asked her, like, what is it that is really important for her, or really precious for her, or really helpful? And she said that it is very important for her to, during her daily life, that she can actually have the space and time to be with herself, to reflect on things. And I find this so true because when many people they are so focused on worries, on anxieties, on the scarcity that they are experiencing, so therefore they have to worry about, for example, making their ends, like having food on the table, shelter for the family, for the kids, that when they are constantly consumed by all these worries, they really don't have the mental space to have thoughts for other things in life. So it is not a surprise that many people they struggle really to get out of where they are at life even when they desire more. Because if they really don't have the energy and the time and the space to actually reflect on their current state and what are the possible ways to get out of the situation, then it is really hard for them to change their lives. And you see, personally, I am a very self led woman. I have always been very self sufficient. So if there is a situation that I'm not happy about, sooner or later I would get myself out of it and I will try to have more and expand more in life. However, I have a lot of compassion for people who really struggle with this. And I really do hope that we can contribute to a better society so that more people can actually have more possibility to change their lives. But, anyways, if you're someone that actually wants to unlock your inner spark, inner creativity, and you feel that for a long time it's been a little bit difficult for you, there is actually a book that I highly recommend. Call it The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron. And when I came across this book a few years ago, I actually didn't know what it was really about. And somehow I just felt drawn to this book. So I ended up getting a physical copy of it. But then sometime later, I actually got the digital version, the audio book of it. And I actually discovered that this book is an inner journey to reconnect with our inner creativity. And it is a really amazing book for inner work. And one of the things that the book taught was a journaling technique called the morning pages. And this technique, I can tell you that it is actually really powerful. So even if you don't buy the book or you don't follow the book, just by doing this journaling technique, it will help you start to unlock your inner creativity, really. So, what is the morning page, you might ask? It is actually something very simple. All you needed to do is first thing that you do when you wake up is write 3 pages For example, you might get a notebook and then you write 3 pages of anything that might come up in your mind. Even the weirdest things, even the things that doesn't make sense, but whatever that comes to your thought, you just write it. For example, in one morning, you might wake up and you start to worry about your job or you worry about your kids. Then you just write about it. You just release everything that's on your mind onto these pages. And you must complete the 3 pages and nothing more and nothing less. And then after you complete these pages, and if you are completing a notebook, then after all that, you can just throw the notebook away and you never really read what you write. You just write it, release it, and that's it. And if you wake up and you're thinking about the dream that you had, you can also write about that. And if nothing is coming to your mind, for example, then you might as well write, okay, nothing is coming to my mind, which by itself is actually a thought as well. And usually our mind is very filled with a lot of things, anyways. For many people, we just have this inner voice that is often talking, even if it says that, oh, nothing is in my mind right now. So you can just write about it. And then, for example, maybe there are weird thoughts. I don't know, pigs are flying, let's say, or there's an airplane. Just write anything. And I can tell you that some people might start to feel different after a few days, and some might notice the difference after a few weeks. So some people will take be faster, and some people will take longer. But then you might notice that your mind is starting to have more ideas, more things that might come up in your mind after a while. Because when you're doing this journaling technique, you're basically, when you wake up, your mind is the clearest and you don't have all those filters, for example, that when you are more awake and more alert, you might start to censor or dismiss certain thoughts because there might be embarrassment, there might be feelings of being uncomfortable with what you're thinking. But when we wake up and without doing anything else, so without thinking about anything else in particular, our mind has this clearer state that is less filtered. So in this moment, when you can release the thoughts that you have onto the paper and then just let it go and forget about the paper, then you're basically cleansing your mind in a way, making it feel less heavy. And the more you declutter your mind, the more you're actually cleansing this channel of creativity. So, if you really feel that somehow you have a blocked creativity and your inner spark is not really obvious for you, like it's hidden somehow within you, then maybe you can give it a try. And if it is really resonating, what I'm talking is really resonating with you, you might be interested in really getting the artist's way, this book, because I can tell you that this book is quite powerful when it comes to doing the inner work exercises to help you tap into your inner creativity and also to release all those limiting beliefs, all those self-imposed blockages, and all those conditioning since childhood that are actually repressing our inner creativity. All those, oh, this might be too much, maybe people don't like it, or I might as well be a starving artist, musician, etc. Or I am not as talented as other people, as it seems. We often have all these thoughts, all these limiting beliefs, and we might not even realize it because we are so used to this that we forget our creative side. So it's not just the talented artists, not just those innovative scientists or those genius people that are creative. But we all have an inner creative. It's just many of us are so used to dismiss or even repress that inner spark that we simply disconnect from our inner creativity. So, this week, I'd love to propose this invitation to you to maybe as a self inquiry question. How did the topic of this podcast episode made you feel? What does creativity really mean to you? Without Googling its definition, like how do you feel about your own creativity? And how do you feel when I talked about the journaling technique, the morning pages? Would you actually give it a try? So, as always, feel free to grab a tea, a coffee, a latte, and give yourself the gift of a moment to reflect a little bit about this.